more look back what we did last time in the last online seminar, which we did together with Adamos. Adamos is a new platform with the Adamos Hub and Adamos Store. And last time we presented together with Mr. Tim Busse, the managing director of Adamos. And compared to what we heard today, Adamos is in the very early stage in building the ecosystem and the platform, but still an interesting approach to see what kind of applications are actually emerging. Last time we actually presented a little bit already on where does the future of IoT platforms and this kind of platform business will actually look like. We came up with this conclusion. If we look in the next couple of years, we don't see kind of more platforms emerging, even if the market for platforms will increase. So we see a kind of higher market size. The market will increase by a factor of 3 or 5 in the next 5 years. But still, we will not see that more IoT platform might just come up and might start this business. More like kind of consolidation in a growing market. And we also understood there's a kind of ecosystems, a kind of new research topic. And it's not so easy also for practitioners to get the right book and the right tools in order to build such an ecosystem. Then last time, we already had a kind of very small glimpse on the ecosystem which Adamos actually is building with different kind of partners, the machine builder from different industries, DMG, Duot Size. The ecosystem is also open to include app providers and software specialists. And then at the Adamo store, different kind of customers can either get applications from the machine builder or from the app provider, but still a kind of emerging ecosystem where, of course, the idea is that more machine builders are joining and more app providers might just extend the kind of digital services and applications available for the different machines and the different applications. Then, if you look into ecosystem, of course, the idea of the ecosystem is nothing new, but it's something different, especially in the digital world. It's a normal part of the spectrum, how organizations might be structured. Is it a supply chain? Are you vertically integrated? And a huge space that actually accounts for ecosystems. But it's not the same as an open market. But you build an ecosystems with kind of stable partners that you're able to serve your initial customer actually better. So you try to orchestrate different kind of applications, digital services that somehow enrich your customer value. And it's very dynamic. So there might be new partners joining. It's very emergent that maybe some partners might change their role. Also the rules and the governance mechanisms might change over time. Highly collaborative, and sometimes it might be kind of who is influencing which partners, who takes which role in the ecosystem and what kind of position. Sometimes it might be a little bit indirect, that not everyone is working directly together. There might be also some indirect relationships. And it's very much about a network where you focus getting more knowledge from competences from partners inside your company or working together in order, as I explained, to make this kind of customer value better. What sometimes limits the idea of ecosystems is that in some situations we see there are some kind of misconceptions or myths what the ecosystem actually should look like and how to deal with ecosystems. In many situations, we have seen that actually from the beginning, managers think the platform itself is already the ecosystem. No, it's not. Your ecosystem is about different people from different companies, different partners with different competences. So it's not the platform is the vision in order to provide some customer value, but the ecosystem is very much about getting different kind of companies with different kind of incentives, with different kind of cultures together in order to provide better and more customer value. Then another misconception is often that we see strategy matters. Yes, strategy is important, but it's actually daily business the everyday way how you deal with partners, how you build a personal relationship, how you establish trust, credibility in your network, that makes the ecosystem strategy either succeed or fail. Then another misconception sometimes that you have to have an ecosystem in place from the beginning to make an IoT platform successful. We believe you have to have an ecosystem in mind, but it doesn't mean that you from the beginning you have to spend maybe too much resources on building ecosystems and managing the ecosystem already. But let's try to make your own strategic position clear, how you can use the IoT platform for your own business, where do you see some cost reductions, what's your own revenue position. And if you have a strong position yourself, then it might become easier to start building an ecosystem with different kind of partners. It doesn't mean that from the beginning, you already have to have an ecosystem to get the platform working. Then sometimes people believe, okay, ecosystems, I have a lot of knowledge about supply chain management, and I just take this knowledge from supply chain management. This should also work for the ecosystem. And it's also a kind of shortfall or pitfall. No, it needs a different approach. It means much more investing into building trust, credibility, maybe also dealing with some hidden agendas in the ecosystems. So the idea of supply chain management is not directly transferable to the ecosystem approach. And then the last two misconceptions which we see, that sometimes people believe, ecosystem has to be extremely open. You have to involve many different partners. Yes, partners might help. But the question is about how to choose the right partner. And one way to choose is about understanding, okay, what's the partner contribution to make your customers more successful and to improve the jobs of your customers. So that's actually the criteria that you that might influence the number of ecosystem partners you actually need. It's about who can actually contribute in a way that your customers become more successful. And then finally, once you build an ecosystem, don't believe it will not change anything in the company. It will change your DNA, your culture. It's about mindset. And Mr. Löbig has an interesting expression on that in his presentation. It changed your culture, your DNA, your practices, your tools. So it will come with a lot of changes in the way how you organize your own company, in being able to benefit from the ecosystem in the way you expect it. Okay, this is just like a small introduction. We will keep the question afterwards. And it's okay, I would hand over to Mr. van Löbeke on his presentation about 365FarmNet.
So what we talk about is IoT and platform, and in particular, why does traditional industry companies go into IoT platforms? Which in particular is not only B2B, but even in a very traditional business such as farming. So what it's all about is not that I want to sell you my best employees or rubber boots or any combines. It's about why does we as a class corporation decided to go into a platform business. So I start with a bit of an provoking statement. Just imagine you have the best well-known and oldest manufacturer of heating systems and boilers. And of course, they emerge over the time. The product becomes modern and better, and they even have an app to steer the heating system. Well, now there is the house owner, and the house owner buys such a little device for $150. And this device is on his wall, and this device knows exactly when the guy is home and when he's not. So this device makes sure that he saves a lot of money in heating when he's not home, and it also makes sure that the house is warm when he's there. So the next heating system he will buy for $20,000 is only one which is able to communicate with this little device. If this very proud old company, which is out there for 150 years, does not understand this changes in the requirements on the side of the customer, they will not sell anymore. So it's little things that change outside that make you and have to make you think differently. And that comes all down to changing the viewpoint away from your product, away from your company, all the way to the customer. What is his needs and what is his issues? And you have to decide which issues you want to solve and which not. Talking about class, just to give a bit of sound understanding what we do and what we are mainly famous for harvesting machines. Every second forage harvester in the world is from Claas. We bought Renault Tractor like 13 years ago, so we have all the tractor business and many other machines. And of course, we have a lot of electronics. The machines, they work autonomously. They drive autonomously on the field. So autonomous driving, what we discussed in the car industry, it's standard in our industry since a long time. And they're guided by different pilot systems, no matter if that is by laser, by GPS, by sensors, or by camera. This goes all the way down to things like crop sensor, where we can detect in front of the tractor the need of the very plant for fertilizer, and this information goes back to the fertilizer in the back of the tractor in order to bring out the stuff where it has to be. And the machines, they do yield mapping. What does it mean? They bring the data of the quality and the amount and the moisture of the wheat they harvest per square meter. So you know exactly what harvest you got per square meter on your field. And this is pretty neat information in order to do some application maps out of that. That means that you can use the data in order to fertilize the field in a different way to get the weed spots out of it. We have production plants all over the world, mainly Germany, but we have in China, Russia, France, India, and of course we have several sales organizations in place. We have about 12,500 employees and do a turnover of 4.5 billion. Well, also we observe what is going out there. So if you see the car industry, and you all know the advertising Freude am Fahren, or the ultimate driving machine, which is a statement and which is promise of a company. So when the car starts to drive autonomously, it doesn't make sense anymore to focus on the ultimate driving machine because nobody's driving it. So you have to change completely what is the person doing in a car. He's not driving anymore. He has a lot of time. So what is he doing with his time? So you have to change the way you define your product. And that's the same a bit with our area. The tractor up to some years ago was a stupid pulling machine. Well, now it drives autonomously, and there's a lot of time the driver or the farmer spends on the tractor. But of course, he wants to do some other things than just looking out of the window. So he wants to do his business, or he wants to do TikTok, or have music videos or whatever. So that's also a complete change of viewpoint, not anymore concentrating on the tractor only, but on the user interface between the tractor, the machine, and the driver. So what is he doing in the cabin actually? Is it more important to get the finest enhancement and efficiency improvement on the traction control, or is it more important to get a good stereo in the cabin and a cooling box for the driver? So these kind of things, of course, occur. And if you define the product by technicians, they will always go to the perfect technical solution, but not for what the driver actually sees. The last decades, and is true for any German mainly or company in the product area, the last decades were actually focused on efficiency improvement of the single product. And that comes up to limits. So in our case, we are already at the limits. So the machines are wider than the streets we have available, and the machines become too heavy for the soil. So we have to think differently. The growth limits are there, so we have to grow in another stage. So the question we also always have is, where do we see competitive advantage in our product? And this is not anymore size and power. Every machine, also the competitor, is powerful and big. So we have to change the point of view, and we have to stop only concentrating on our product and then trying to convince the salespeople that they convince the customer that's a good product. We have to start with the client and understand what is his business model, what is his challenges in his business model, and maybe these challenges have nothing to do with our core product. Maybe he doesn't care about the tractor all the day long. Maybe it's completely different things. So we really have to understand what is his challenges, and then we have to decide what challenges can and do we want to solve. And if we look at our clients, we have a lot of buying criteria for machines. But if you analyze the buying criteria, and it all comes down to two major issues in farming. And that is profitability of the farm, and the other one is regulations. We have a lot of regulations in the EU for when are you allowed to spray what kind of fertilizer, for example, which gives a lot of limits to the farmer to raise his efficiency in the farm. Profitability means that he is competing on the world market for wheat prices or corn prices. So he cannot do anything on the price side. He has to work on the cost side. And on the cost side, you need transparency of your processes. And to get transparency on the processes, you need to document. And that's a pain. So these are the main challenges the farmer has. And then, of course, we have several trends in the industry, like you have in any industry, such as sustainability discussions we have in politics a lot, which has a large influence on the regulations that will come up for the farmer. We have digitalization of farming, and also we have broadening boundaries. That means that several players and stakeholders in the process of farming leaving their corridor and getting into different solutions. But if we have a look on the farmer has thousands of jobs. So it starts with his field and with lending and contracts. He has energy production such as biogas. He has milk production, meat production. He has the silos. He has a workshop. He has his office. So millions of things that he cares about before he even thinks of our core product, the machine. Of course, we as a company, we think that the machine is in the center of the universe. It's the center of his brain, but it's not. It doesn't play that big role that we think it will do. So we have to think about what does he do in the entire day and how can we help him here in order to not only to get a new business model in or a new business area, but also to support the core business we have. So I don't know if you have seen this picture before. That is not from us. That's from Porter, and he used agricultural machine as a sample. This is the evolvement of the intelligence of machines, how it evolved over the years. So we start from left. We have a single product, such as a tractor that we were building such up to the 90s or the 80s, very product-centric. And we go all the way in the slide to customer-centric, which is the other point of view. So product-centric is the stupid tractor that then in the second step was able to, generate some data. And you were able to plug in the tractor and get some data out. Not very that useful, maybe a bit for maintenance and technical reasons. The third step, and that's where the most companies are in, is a smart and connected product. Means a machine that is able to send data to a cloud or computer. We call it telematic systems. So it observes what the machine is doing. We can see where the failures in the machine is, or we can see where the machine has really been. That's what I compare with a very well-trained football player. So we all know that a well-trained football player does not do a good match. So you need the interconnection between the football players. And that's what the next step is, a system of products. So you have a machine, such a harvester on the field. Well, the harvester can be very efficient on the field when harvesting grain, but the grain tank of the harvester is full after 10 minutes. Then the machine stops. If there's not the wagon to get the grain off. So it's about logistics and the communication between machines or between the drivers. That is meant with system of the product. If you go one step further, you would integrate this football team with the doctor, with the stadium, with the team, with the fans, with the media. And that's what the system of system is. So if you go out for harvesting with your machine park, it's not only the machine set count, it's the moisture of the grain, the right moment to do harvesting, the weather conditions, the soil conditions. So how wet is the soil? Do you get stuck in the mud or not? All these sort of things that you have to take care about before you even go to have a perfect harvest. And that's exactly what we care about and try to care about with an online platform, in order to get all this nitty-gritty data and information together in order to have a planning system and documentation system for everything that happens out there. So at the end, what the farmer is getting is, like, you can call it ERP system, but it's rather a management system for planning, automated documentation, control, analytics, advice for everything he does. This system has all the master data, but they also know what soil do you have, when to go out for harvest, all the way up to pay attention, cow number 17 will be sick in 2 days, go out now and separate from the herd. So it's a million things that is integrated in this platform, which makes it a bit complex, and I will come to the challenges later. The farmer was, of course, challenged with thousands of different systems in the different fields of his operations. And he wants to have one system where everything is integrated, because he doesn't want to use several different systems with different user interfaces, with different master data, where you have always put in master data and he cannot pull it out. He cannot combine the data with each other with different systems. So he wants one. In order to manage his resources,
Hello.
The biggest cost factors he has is the inputs, which means fertilizer, seed, and plant protection. And that's what he has
Call it 5 that I need to join.
try to get down and to manage in order to get his cost side.
Presentation.
Sorry, was there a question? Yeah, and this goes all the way to the transparency we sometimes discuss in the food industry, such as Nestle, that they say, well, the consumer want to know what fertilizer went in the fodder of the cow that produced the milk that then was produced to the yogurt, which is on the breakfast table. So the transparency of this entire chain, what is happening on the farm, all the way down to the consumer, is something we can build up with this system. We have this discussion a lot with the food industry. However, there is no willingness to pay on neither side, neither on the consumer side nor on the farmer side. But that's a lot of discussion which goes into this direction. So having said that, we come to the IoT platform topic. Well, we know a bit about machines, obviously, over the last 100 years, but we don't have a clue about milk, about animals, about seeds or fertilizers. So what we had to build is a platform, a table where all these specialized companies in this area I just mentioned were able to bring their knowledge as an application on top, so that the farmer then has one system and all the different applications are integrated, no matter if that is his resources he's using, the different machineries, and he's using a lot of different brands of machines, not just one machine brand, all the sensors he has out there and content. So we had to build up this partner ecosystem in order to provide a holistic management portal and system or platform for the farmer. And that's what we started like 8 years ago. Now we have about 50 different companies that are partnering in order to bring their knowledge into the platform with applications. This goes all the way down, and there it becomes complicated when you start the platform as the machine manufacturers and you want the other machine manufacturers to take part of it. So that was the most trickiest part, to make them accept to send their machine data into the cloud of this platform, or to share data between the clouds of the different manufacturers. Well, as I mentioned, the farmer in Europe, they have machines from different manufacturers. It's not like in the US where you find farms that have 70% or 70% of the farms, they only have John Deere. So that's pretty easy to say, well, we just do John Deere platform. We don't need any other machine data in. So at the end, it took us 3.5 years to discuss with the main manufacturers to think about the farmer and what the farmer needs. So if I run different brands, I need the data of all the brands in one platform, and that's was his point by his drivers on order, even to buy a new tractor or a new machine, if that machine is connected or not. And this has been accepted. We were building on a standard which was not really a technical question. It was more a mindset question. Do we allow data to flow between the clouds or not? And that's what we prepared with a lot of contracts and up and forth and discussions, you can imagine, particularly with the salespeople. And at the end, we were in November 19, we were going public with this approach. And the media was jumping right on it, because that was new in any industry, that the main competitors share the data of their machines or their cars or whatever that is. So that was even titled as a digital Mauerfall, because that was such a big step. However, we're just in the start with some data, the really relevant data, such as consumption, diesel consumption, or economic data, that is not shared yet. That's still discussions going on to how deep in data sharing we really can go. So of course we have a lot of sensors out there with different data standards, and we have to connect them all. So we have to build also an IoT platform, technical wise, not only the management platform, in order to interpret the data, to tune the data, and to sort it and get it out to analytics wherever we need it. So at the end, you have a system which is fully cloud-based, works on any device, no matter if that's smartphone apps or if that is tablets or whatever you have, in order to have a full overview, not just about the health of your soil, the growth of your grain, or also who has been where with what kind of machine combination, how long, and produce what kind of cost on what field. So you get a perfect P&L automatically of every field you have out there, and therefore you see your cost traps and can work on your profitability. So having said all that, let us get a bit into the challenges that we've faced so far doing this. But before we go in there, is there maybe already some questions we should go into, or was it clear so far?
Yeah, if there's any questions, just put it in the chat function, please. We got a question from Sean. Why don't you stop making tractors? You can buy them cheaper from others.
Well, that's if you ask Mercedes-Benz why they do make cars, and our main business is combines and tractors, and it's working pretty good. So it's still our core business.
Yeah. And I got a question from Wolfgang from INSEAD. How do you make sure you remain the central orchestrator of the platform? I guess it might relate to your challenges. You might just explain it in a few minutes, but how do you make sure that you at 365FarmNet is the orchestrator of the platform?
Well, that's pretty easy. When we have the master data management and we have the contract. So if you want to become a partner, then you have to sign certain contracts in order to bring your applications on the platform. So that's not the tricky part. The tricky part is rather what happens with other platforms that are built, and do we rather have a war on platforms that all try to get the customer on their platform, and then we will see over the years a lot of consolidation and maybe some 3 or 4 platforms remaining, and then we will have the war on the platform between the different applications.
Thanks. There are no question, right? But you can, if you can continue with your challenges, that would be great.
Okay, perfect. So the idea actually came from a pretty visionary farmer, not from Klaas itself, that was getting to Klaas and had a job at Klaas, and he said, well, you have to think about this platform approach, which was completely new those days. That's in 2010, so 11 years ago. And it was quite challenging to convince Klaas to go this route because there's a lot of insecurity. There's no benchmark. It's a complete different business and all and so on. So the owner, which was those days almost 90 years old, he said, "Well, go ahead and do it." And then they tried to build it inside the ecosystem of manufacturers of machine, with all the processes, the standards, the planning cycles, the mindset. And that's what they tried in 1.5 years to establish. And they stopped. Why did they stop it? Because it didn't go anywhere. Just a sample that HR was not even knowledgeable, able to recruit the right people because they didn't have a clue about what kind of people do I have to recruit when I do web development. You don't know about web development. The worst thing that can happen, and that's I've seen a lot of companies, is that the internal IT department, which care about infrastructure and computers, that they say, well, we will do it because we know what web development is, and that's for sure the wrong direction, because cloud and web development has nothing to do with the internal IT of corporations. So we started from scratch, outside on the green field, with a different brand, with a different team, with a different mindset, and we built it up from scratch. And we had very little time because there's every 2 years the biggest farm show of the world in Hanover. But we wanted to present that as the first ones. And I was afraid that somebody else would come with the same idea. So we pushed a lot on building a prototype that we presented. That's what we did in November 2013. And the reaction of the market was far greater than we thought. And suddenly the expectations to get this product on the farm was huge. Direction of the industry was big, because I've never seen that. John Deere was with the entire board, I think, 4 times on our booth to understand what we're doing there. And a lot of companies wanted to join as partners. So we still had only a prototype. So we had the big challenge of what to do with a prototype and building on top of it, but building from scratch a new product. So we had to involve, we had to build up the teams, the product development, brand building, marketing, everything was there. And then we had a certain business model what we thought that would work, but it didn't. So we changed the business model in November 2015, and then we saw how the number of customers went up the way we wanted to be. So then in 2017, we started with the internationalization. We went to Poland and France, and tried to scale the platform. The issue with scaling the platform is regulations in Europe. So if you see, we have different states in Germany, and every state in Germany, every Bundesland has different regulations. And as a software for farmers, we have to cope with these regulations and make sure the farmers will meet the regulations by using the software, which is a nightmare and a big issue in scaling. So if you then go to France or Poland, you have another set of regulations that you have to care about. So scaling normally with platform business is the key to success, and scaling at the same time here in farming is a nightmare. So what kind of challenges do we face? So that is, we have 2 sides. We have one, the corporate side of a big company, traditional company. So what challenges do we have here when going into IoT platforms, and what challenges do we see in this 365 venture? So if you look at the corporate side, the first thing, of course, on the board level is risk acceptance. Managers of corporations, they hate risk. They don't cope with risk. It's not entrepreneurs. It's managers. It's a different mindset. And the first question that always comes is, what's the return on investment? Well, if you go into an IoT platform in a completely new environment, no benchmark, then it's very, very difficult to play on return on investment. We wrote business plan every half year. We wrote a new business plan, and we knew that the business plan was wrong for sure. If we look at the standards of processes, how machines and products were built with a 7 years cycle until we could launch a product in cloud, that's of course a completely different world than the quick 6 weeks launch cycle that we have in the web world. Skill sets. We of course thought, well, we can sell this platform through the sales network of the mother company. And we bitterly had to learn and understand that this doesn't work, because the sales organization, as well as the dealers and the salesman of the dealer, they know how to sell a combine or a tractor, and they know their tractor pretty well, and they know the tractor of the competitor. But then the brain is full. They don't have a clue about the process issues on farming. They don't have a clue how to sell a solution to make farm operations more efficient. So this entire sales channel was just not usable, which was a big challenge for us in order to understand, well, how can we sell, what network can we use apart from the digital network that of course we played a lot. And then you have the typical things you have in the corporate world with digital things, thousands of different projects, but no real digital strategy. So I have very seldom seen companies that have a digital strategy or even a data strategy in place in order to decide what digital projects do I really force and what do I not. So the biggest thing in the corporate world you need to make digital projects successful is to have a clear vision and target and strategy also for data, and it's all about the culture. So having said that, let's have a view on the digital venture 365 and what challenges we have seen there. And we have three, let's say, groups of challenges. One is the market, one is the product, and one is the partner world. And if we start on top, first of all, to find the right people with the right competence, with competence in the combination of farming and web development. You don't find these people. So you have to build this knowledge from scratch, and that takes a lot of effort and time. We're coming out with a new approach on how to manage farming, which is a bit a paradigm shift. And farmers, same in many other industries, they also listen a lot to their associations, and the associations are very reluctant, very careful if there's a completely new approach they don't understand. So we had a lot of work to get to the influencers and make them understand what the benefit of this approach is. Because the first things, of course, in 2013 we heard, oh, what about the data privacy? What about who is looking into this data? What do you do with it? And so on. And I would never give you an insight of my farm. So these kind of discussions, of course, we faced a lot, in particular with these associations. Then we had learned that, of course, we were on with a big, huge booth in 2013 on the fair show, but we didn't have a product ready. We had a prototype, and to make it properly, you need another 2 to 3 years to bring a good product on the market. So it's all about timing and speed. So if you talk to something in digital, everybody would expect it's immediately available and it works immediately. But then we have talked about the business model. It's pretty difficult to get in the business model where you say, well, what is the willingness to pay? What is the price tag you can raise for a completely new thing the farmer has to get into? we have a very erklärungsbedürftiges Produkt, which means a product which needs a lot of training to really understand that, because it's so big. And does the farmer really see the value up front when he first has to enter a lot of data in order to get the value out? So how do you make the entry level, the entry burden, very, very low, so that the farmer is willing to test it, to try it, and then to get hungry in order to buy further applications? Then, of course, we have a lot of complexity. We have a lot of requests. The farming is complex, and there's a lot of things that we want to do. But so prioritization in the product was a huge topic. So what do we do first? Where do we have our MVPs? Where do we have the first success stories that we can build on top? So not to get confused with all the different things that the farmers are crying for, but to stick to your roadmap. And then we have the partner side. The biggest learning we had with partners is that the partner companies, they have a lot of knowledge in hundreds of years combined of their domain. However, they do not have this domain knowledge readily available as a digital application. So they are still in the orientation phase of digitalization themselves. Should they do a platform? Should they do an application? How to do an application? How to develop it? They don't have a clue about application development. So that was a big challenge, so that we had to do a lot of things ourselves that we wanted to rely on partners to get that. And the second part is a bit the management of the partners. There's a big group of partners. You have to try to get the right people to talk to with the right departments. At the same time, you cannot employ 20 partner managers in order to make them happy. You have to help them a lot to do the applications and to sell the applications, etc. So partner management, it was fully underestimated when we started the platform. Whatever you do in IoT platform, and that's also true for any startup, where we see the million startups out there, it's about customer value. Does the customer see an immediate value into an IoT platform or an application that we bring to the market, or would he not see this value? If he doesn't see the value, he wouldn't buy it, he wouldn't jump on it, he wouldn't try it. So that's the key for everything you do. So maybe another difference of what we have in the core business and the digital business. So what we see here is an example of Germany, the number of farms and the size of farms. So on the x-axis, you have the size of farms, which are separated by hectare size. So you have up to 50 hectare and 100 hectare and so on. And then you have the number of farms on the epsilon axis. So of course, the big number of farms are very, very small farms in Germany, under 50 hectare, which are not that much relevant for a premium manufacturer such as Claas in the machinery business. So the customers of Claas that Claas know and Claas addresses also with their sales network is the big farms from 300 hectare above. So what we address with the IoT platform is all of the customers. So the major customers we address with this new product or new platform is a market that we do not know from our machine business. So suddenly we have to understand this kind of farms or companies, if you wish. Maybe one of the last slides, and what we also see with all the digital platform discussions we have and startups and so on, we have a hype curve, and I'm sure you have seen that before. First, at the beginning, you have a lot of expectation of on a new hype that's coming up, such as digital farming, and everybody's jumping on it. A lot of startups, a lot of fairs and congresses and discussions and so on, presentations, and a lot of promises also by all these young companies. And then we figure out who. It's more difficult than we thought, and the efficiency is not there, and the effect doesn't show up, and the promises are not really matching reality. And so we fall down a lot on what does really make sense and not. And then slowly, those things that really make sense and bring customer value will establish. So now, of course, you might have the question of where we are in this cycle. And I think we are somewhere we had the first peak, let's say three years ago. And then we had the down cycle. Some are on the down cycle, some are already in picking up. What will be a long-term future success and platforms that will establish. Maybe some learnings in general, also for big companies, talking about data as the new gold, and data gathering and applications to get insights and so on. If you don't have an idea what problems to solve with data, or what to do with the data, then big data is bullshit, because you might end up building a lot of applications and gathering a lot of data for a lot of money, but you don't have any idea what to do with it at the end. And maybe the last slogan, and my favorite one, is that everything where we talk about digital has nothing to do with technology. It has only to do with mindset, in particular for established traditional companies that have to shift their or switch their mindset by 180 degree. So switch the viewpoint by 180 degree, away from their own product, away from their company, all the way to the customer, to the business model of the customer, to the challenges of the customer they are addressing to. So that was a lot of talk. There was a lot of information. I hope you didn't fall asleep and you could follow me. And maybe we have some time left to answer some questions.